Thank you. Thank you very much, and good evening. It is extremely difficult for me to speak tonight after I have listened to the series of interventions, particularly from young people. I just feel totally inadequate. And I had prepared some notes, and I decided to move away from them, and I'll try using my very informal way of communication to touch on some of the issues which I believe characterize inequality in our times, and how you, young people, in your own way of organizing and using the tools which are in your hands, perhaps you need to look at this inequality big beast in different ways, but then to change effectively our societies. Let me begin by saying, for me, I think some of the most striking aspects of inequality today are race, gender, income, and voice. Wherever you are. I think if you look carefully, you'll realize that as human family, we haven't crossed the bridge of accepting that race is not anything which divides us. On the contrary, every single human being has the human dignity, and in that human dignity, which somehow is expressed by the fact that I cut myself, my blood is red, and a person who can be of Indian origin or white or of any other race, when he or she cuts, has also the same kind of red blood. We are absolutely equal. But in the structures, in social structures, and even political structures, economic structures which have been established and we are living in, go wherever you are, you go. Even if it's in the so developed countries, black people have known a sense of equality and exercise their rights anywhere. It is an issue. Second one, as I said, is gender. It goes across the globe. It doesn't matter where you are. It doesn't matter even of which race you belong to. It doesn't even matter what each age you are, whether you are a woman, you are young, you are a girl. Just because you have been born female, as human family, we haven't crossed the bridge of accepting that men and women are equal. The third element which I mentioned is income. And this comes to the systems which I'm going to talk about in a few seconds, is that the structures which we have been allowing to govern our lives as human family are in a way where income defines opportunities or non-opportunities, and we are at a situation where simply because you are born or you live in certain families in which you don't have those opportunities, your income and prospects are limited. I'm not saying they are not existent, but I'm saying are extremely limited. And we have allowed ourselves to value people according to the power of what they have, instead of defining and accepting people according to the values of who they are and what they are able to give to society. So the having or not having has shaped in recent times actually the control of structures, of institutions, and even the control of our countries. And even of multilateral institutions are controlled by those who have much more income than others. So this thing of income, for me, I think it's the third one. The last I wanted to mention is the voice. As elders were talking during our discussions during the day, we're talking about women's voice. But I want to add the voice of young people, the voice of the disabled, the voice of indigenous people, the voice even of smaller countries compared with what is considered to be bigger countries, the voice. And when I say voice, I mean the possibility, it's not the ability, the possibility which the structures allow you, whether you are female, whether you are young, you are disabled, you are in a small, the so considered the small country, as if nations are to be measured according to the number of people they have or the number of, or the quality of development which we can call. But the possibility of expressing yourselves and putting across your aspirations and it to be taken into account equally, and be valued equally, that's what I call voice. It's not because people don't shout. There are lots of people who shout, but if they're not listened to, their aspirations and their demands are not being taken into account, so they don't really matter when decisions are to be made. The voice, I think it's another element of classifying who, at the end of the day, the decision-making, which is going to rule the world, who is listened to and who is taken into account. And in this voice, I want also to say something is that it's not necessarily many times that people do not speak. It's because, again, the power of decision is not in the hands of those who have a just cause. And we talk of justice amongst us. It's not whether you are just or not. It's the power of those who have the control. So we are caught up as human family in terms of values. What are the values which are guiding our relations as human family, and how do we really embrace one another on the basis that all those differences, they don't count to the fact that from my veins, I have the red blood and anyone has the values and the value of human being. Let me come now to Mandela. We, as elders, we decided to, let me say it in my English, to use Mandela as a reference. Take him as a reference. It's not the human being he is. It is the values he embodies and he represents. And because these values, we understand they are really extremely alive and inspirational for the challenges which we still have. We decided to celebrate our founder, but we want to offer, particularly to young people, Mandela as values. As values. And we chose to talk of peace, to talk of health, to talk of justice, and today we talk of inequality. But all this to be tackled and resolved on the basis of values. So I want to challenge young people to go back and say, what is the value system which we want to embrace? It's up to you now. Mandela is a reference of the 20th century. You are in 21st century. You have knowledge, you have tools, and you have the ability to connect in seconds. You can communicate in millions. There was a reference to this. And those days, Aya was saying, it is true. I don't know. No, it was Ernesto who said, we didn't have Twitter. So you have absolutely much more knowledge which is based in the experience of the good things which Mandela's generation did, but also the wrong things Mandela's generation did. And these are lessons you have to take from. You have the tools, you have the knowledge, you have the ability to communicate, as I was saying, in a way you can build movements very easily and very quickly. So when we say as elders, we say to young people is, what has the generation of Mandela, what has helped them to achieve the goal, and what was the goal? The first, clarity in the ultimate goal you have in mind, to be very clear. And that generation was absolutely clear that they had a series of freedoms they wanted to achieve. But they had this strategy to say which is the first, the second, the third, although they are intertwined, but for you to be able to have a radical change, you need to have political freedom. And that's why they decided to fight for political freedom. And it doesn't mean that they were not concerned about economic freedom, the social freedoms, and the cultural freedom. Everything was necessary, but without being in charge, which means to be politically in position where you can drive radical transformation, and you can have the decision-making in the hands, now I have to say, in the hands of the people. That generation was not fighting individually for individual rights, for smaller groups' rights. It was for the whole of the people. So the first thing I want to say is that for young people, you have to be very clear about the ultimate goal, the freedoms which you have to achieve. But you have also to be clear that you need to have very clear strategies which will allow you to be absolutely in control and to drive the agenda you want. And that's why, Aya, where are you? I'm here. You are here. That's why I will say, if young people in Africa particularly, which I know better, if young people in their numbers, with all this capacity if you have, to be disruptive and to communicate, to build movements, but if you don't take care of the systems and transform the systems, you'll make all the noises you want, but then you'll continue to be, barred by this generation of mine, which is sitting in your parliament, which is sitting in your government, which is sitting in your judiciary, and you'll be so systems. And that's why, again, using the generation of Mandela and using South Africa, they wanted to crush the apartheid system and to establish a new kind of system in which they took care to have a constitution in which anyone can feel embraced. You see, systems. And I think young people have to question, in our case in Africa, to say, is it the electoral system which exists in Africa? Will it allow you, the generation of young people like you, are you going to get there if that system continue to exist? No, You have to transform it. So you have to know how to transform that system which will put you in charge. When generation of Mandela said, not only freedom for us, but majority rule. You remember? They said majority rule. They pulled the majority rule. Whether we are messing up or not with the majority rule, it's another issue. But they put the majority rule in charge with the systems, legal, and the judiciary, which would secure that the majority are in charge. And I want to tell you, systems. You are doing extremely well with the communicating, but I'm not so sure whether you are challenging with clarity and clear strategies. How you are going to transform the systems so that you will be in charge. The other element, I'm coming to an end now, which is very important, is you have to be persistent and focused. It took decades, actually, for that generation to finally to say the whole of the continent is free. It took them decades, but they were very persistent. They were very focused. They were systemic. The strategies could change here and there, but very, very focused. I don't think that I feel so far from you young people that sense of focus, okay, in transforming the systems. And this is valid, globally speaking. It's valid for young people everywhere. I'm using the example of Africa because I know well, but everywhere. The reason why young people in most of the regions across the globe, they don't have access to political power, political decision. It's precisely because they don't have yet clarity on how to grasp the political systems and to control them, to drive, because they have the numbers. They are the majority. No one can negate this. They are majority. And second to youth is women. Men and women, youth and women, yes, they are the future. Someone said it's only women. No, it's not only women. I'm a woman, and I'm a women activist. But those who are going to change institutions and systems in our world, it's women and it's young people. If they work together, they have clarity, and they have strategies, and they have persistence and focus, then they will control the systems and will change. The freedoms are many, as we realize here with Sparks of Hope. Continue to work as you are with that diversity of focus, but you have to be in a common space. You see my hand? None of my figures is strong enough alone. It doesn't matter that I have a specific task for each one of them. But what gives strength to my hand is this. Where the fingers are, is this, when I do this. Okay? So yes, we as elders, we are giving young people the possibility of building the palm. You are diverse, with different skills, with different focus, but you have to build the palm. And you begin by networking, but not only networking as Sparks of Hope, but from networking you define how do you really achieve the fundamental freedoms so that you can continue then to work in diversity. And that's when you have the inclusiveness. And that's when you will be able to say, leave no one behind. Thank you.